Last summer, my friend Jake and I decided to go camping deep in the Appalachian forest. We weren't new to camping. We'd done weekend trips before, usually crowded campgrounds with marked trails in nearby towns. This time was different. We wanted isolation, real wilderness, the kind of place where your phone loses signal and the world feels older. After hours of driving down narrowing roads, we finally parked near a forgotten dirt turnout. No signs, no maps, just trees stretching endlessly in every direction. The air felt heavier there, thick with the smell of pine, damp soil, and running water somewhere in the distance. We hiked for nearly 40 minutes before finding the spot. A small creek cut through the trees, its water moving slow and steady over smooth rocks. The forest was quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like it was listening. No wind, no birds, just the occasional crack of a branch far away. "This is perfect," Jake said, dropping his pack. I agreed, though something about the place made me uneasy. The trees stood close together, tall and dark, their tops blocking most of the sky. Even in daylight, shadows pooled between them. We set up our tent as the sun began to sink. Orange light filtered through the trees, turning the forest into long stripes of gold and black. By the time we finished, night was already creeping in. We built a small campfire and sat close to it, letting the warmth push back the cold. The creek murmured beside us. Everything felt calm, normal. That's when we heard it. A whistle, not a bird, not wind. A clear human whistle playing a slow, repeating melody. It came from just beyond the edge of our firelight. The sound stopped us mid-conversation. Jake looked at me. I looked back at him. The tune repeated again, perfectly steady, as if someone were standing in the dark with nothing better to do. "Probably another camper," Jake said, though his voice lacked confidence. We were miles from the nearest campsite. We both knew that. The whistling continued, looping the same notes over and over. It didn't rush. It didn't stumble. It sounded practiced, intentional. "Hello?" Jake called out. The whistling stopped instantly. The silence that followed was worse. No creek, no insects, nothing. We waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10, nothing happened. Jake laughed nervously. "See? Just someone messing around." I forced a smile, but my stomach stayed tight. The forest felt closer now, like the darkness had leaned in. An hour later, the fire had burned low. That's when the whistling started again. Closer, much closer. The tune was clearer now, slow and haunting, echoing between the trees. It didn't stay in one place. It moved, circling us. We heard footsteps crunching leaves, branches snapping under careful weight. It wasn't running. It wasn't hiding. It was walking around us. "We should check it out," Jake said, already reaching for his flashlight. "Are you insane?" I whispered, but he was already standing. I followed him, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The beam of his flashlight cut through the trees, catching trunks and undergrowth in sharp white flashes. The whistling led us deeper into the woods, about 50 feet from camp. Then it stopped. Jake swept the light around. Trees, shadows, nothing else. We stood there, breathing fast, listening. "That's it?" Jake muttered. We turned around and froze. Our camp was right there, our tent, our fire, but we were also standing next to another campfire. Old, dead. Cold ashes scattered across the ground like bones. Beside it was a tent, collapsed and half-rotted. The fabric ripped and stained with mold. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. My skin crawled. This place hadn't been here before. We would have noticed it. We had set up right next to the creek. There was no way we missed this. Then the whistling started again, right behind us. So close I felt warm breath brush my neck. We ran. We didn't stop until we reached our camp. We dove into the tent and zipped it shut, hands shaking so badly I struggled with the zipper. The whistling continued, all night. It would stop for a few minutes, then start again from a different direction. Sometimes it sounded distant. Sometimes it sounded like it was right outside the tent. At one point, I saw a shadow move across the fabric, tall, thin. Its head brushed the top of the tent. Its shape didn't look right. Arms hung too long. The outline bent in ways a human body shouldn't. I covered my mouth to keep from screaming. Around 3 a.m., the whistling stopped. Then came the scratching. Slow, deliberate. 5 long lines dragged down the side of the tent, stretching the fabric tight. I could hear the material strain under the pressure. Then a voice spoke right outside. Raspy, broken, almost human. "Why won't you come out and play?" Jake squeezed my arm so hard it hurt. Neither of us moved. Neither of us answered. The scratching stopped. We stayed frozen until the first hint of daylight crept through the tent walls. As soon as the sun rose, we packed in silence. 10 minutes. That's all it took. We didn't eat. We didn't talk. We just ran. When we reached the car, my legs felt like they were about to give out. As Jake started the engine, I looked back toward the trees. At the edge of the forest stood a figure. Tall, unnaturally thin. Its arms hung down to its knees. It didn't move. It didn't wave. It just watched. We drove away without looking back again. 3 months later, we saw a news report. A hiker had disappeared in the same area. Search crews found his campsite abandoned. His tent was still standing. Inside his journal was one final entry. "The whistling won't stop. Something is watching me. I think it wants me to follow it." We never went back to those woods. And every now and then, late at night, when everything is quiet, I swear I hear that same melody drifting through the dark. My girlfriend Sarah and I had been looking forward to this weekend for months. The idea of escaping the city, leaving behind deadlines and phone notifications, was almost intoxicating. We packed our gear carefully. A 2-person tent, sleeping bags, a small portable stove, some canned food, and our backpacks. We left Friday afternoon, driving through winding roads flanked by dense Oregon pine forests. The sun was low, spilling golden light through the branches, and a crisp autumn chill filled the air. By the time we reached the park, darkness had settled like a heavy blanket. The small parking area was deserted, save for a single flashlight bobbing in the distance, likely another late camper. We checked the park map again. One site was marked as available, tucked away in a secluded clearing. Perfect. The walk to the campsite was quiet, except for the crunch of fallen pine needles beneath our boots. The trees towered above us, their silhouettes stretching into the night sky. I felt a little thrill at the thought of being completely alone, off the beaten path, but there was a nagging sense of unease. Sarah noticed it too. "This place feels watched," she said, voice low and nervous. I laughed it off. "Just the forest," I said. But her gaze swept the dark woods like she expected to see someone hiding among the trees. I felt it too, a tiny prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the kind you get when something isn't right. We set up our tent by flashlight, trying to keep our movements calm. Sarah handled the poles while I spread the rainfly over the top. The wind rustled the trees, and the shadows they cast seemed to dance in the flickering light. Finally, we unpacked our small camping stove and heated some beans for dinner. We sat in silence, listening to the occasional hoot of an owl and the rustle of the underbrush. The forest was alive, but it was a quiet kind of life, a watchful, patient presence. As we ate, Sarah kept glancing toward the darkened tree line. "I can't shake the feeling we're not alone," she whispered. I reached for her hand. "It's fine," I said, though the truth was I wasn't entirely convinced. We went to sleep around midnight, exhausted from the long drive and the adrenaline of setting up camp in the dark. I curled up in the sleeping bag next to her, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling that had settled over us. At 2 a.m. I was woken by a shaking. Sarah's hand was on my shoulder, gentle but insistent. "Someone is outside," she whispered, barely audible. My heart rate spiked instantly. I froze, listening. At first, all I heard was the wind in the pines, the soft sighing of branches. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling our tent. I peeked at the fabric of the tent. A shadow moved across the canvas. A human figure standing completely still as if studying us. My voice shook slightly as I called out, "Hello?" No response. The shadow shifted, then retreated into the darkness. The footsteps faded toward the trees. "Maybe it was a ranger," Sarah said, though her voice lacked conviction. "They check on people sometimes." I nodded, though I didn't believe it. The sense of being watched didn't leave, and sleep no longer seemed possible. We lay there, tense, ears straining. An hour passed in silence, and just as my eyelids started to feel heavy again, another sound broke through. Footsteps, this time from multiple directions. 3 or 4 distinct sets moving around our tent. They weren't careful. They wanted us to hear them. Then came the whispers. Low, angry, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to surround us. Sarah clung to me, shaking. Her tears dampened my sleeve. "We need to leave," she said, panic rising in her voice. "It's too dark," I replied, trying to remain rational. "We'll get lost in the woods." "We wait until morning." The whispers stopped. For a moment there was a horrifying calm. Then, digging, the sharp, hollow thud of a shovel hitting earth. Repeated, methodical, right next to our tent. The sound sent shivers down my spine. The digging continued, relentless. Every thump of the shovel against dirt made my stomach tighten. I wanted to peek outside to see who or what was out there, but fear rooted me to the sleeping bag. Sarah whispered questions I couldn't answer, and I held her close, trying to be brave even as my own heart raced. Time became distorted. Minutes stretched into hours. The shoveling never stopped. It was hypnotic and maddening at once. The rhythm of human labor in the dead of night, in the middle of an abandoned campsite that technically shouldn't exist. I tried reasoning, going over all possibilities. Could it be a prank? A group of campers hiding in the woods thinking we'd find it funny? But no, the voices were angry, not playful. And the shadow we'd seen earlier? That was deliberate, malevolent even. By 4 a.m., exhaustion was battling with fear. My muscles ached from tension. I whispered to Sarah, suggesting we try to block out the sound to sleep through it. She nodded weakly, tears still on her cheeks. When the first faint light of dawn began to creep through the trees, we dared to look outside. There was no one in sight. The forest was quiet, but the fear hadn't dissipated. It lingered like a thick fog. We quickly unzipped the tent, intending to pack our gear and leave immediately. What we saw froze us in place. The tent was completely empty. Our sleeping bags, our backpacks, the little stove, everything gone. I stumbled backward, trying to comprehend it. Sarah clutched my arm, shaking. "It's all gone," she said, her voice trembling. We ran toward the car, leaving behind the campsite without even looking back. Our breaths came in ragged gasps. The trees seemed to close in around us, as if trying to trap us in that space. Once inside the car, we fumbled with the keys and started the engine. As we drove away, I glanced back at the campsite. Nothing appeared disturbed. No hole, no footprints, no sign of anyone having been there. Panic mixed with disbelief. Were we imagining it? Had the night been a dream? But the emptiness of the tent told a different story. At the ranger station, our report was met with a mixture of confusion and concern. The ranger listened, nodded, and then asked a few questions I couldn't answer. Finally, he pulled up records on a computer. "Sir," he said, his tone carefully neutral, "that campsite has been closed for 3 years. A family disappeared from that exact spot in 2021. Their tent and belongings were found, but no sign of them. The area has been off limits since." I stared at him, speechless. "But the map, it showed the site as available," I protested. He brought up the current official park map. There it was, or rather, wasn't. That campsite didn't exist on any legitimate record. We never got our belongings back. But even now, months later, late at night, I sometimes wake up to the sound of digging, and I wonder, with a chill that runs straight down my spine, what they were burying next to our tent. I had been planning this solo camping trip for months. Life had been overwhelming lately, and I needed time to think. Northern Canada was perfect, vast, remote, and quiet. I packed my gear carefully, checking my backpack twice to make sure I had everything. Tent, sleeping bag, food, cooking gear, and of course, my fishing equipment. I wanted a peaceful escape, nothing complicated. After a long drive, I finally arrived at the lake just before sunset. It was more beautiful than I imagined. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the dark green of the forest around it. Mist hovered over the surface, giving everything a soft, quiet feel. I chose a spot on a small beach surrounded by trees. It felt private and safe. No one else was around. I set up my tent, unpacked my things, and built a small campfire. The first night was perfect. I cooked my dinner over the flames, enjoying the sound of the fire crackling and the soft lapping of the water on the shore. Later, I fished a little, catching a small trout that would be my lunch for the next day. As night fell, I watched the stars appear in the clear sky. It was peaceful, the kind of peace that makes you forget everything else. I lay down in my tent and listened to the gentle waves. Sleep came easily, and for the first time in weeks I felt calm. The next day was bright and calm. I hiked around the lake, explored the forest, and tried to enjoy the silence. But as night came, something inside me felt different. The air seemed heavier and the sounds of the forest felt sharper. My campfire flickered in the darkness, shadows dancing across the trees. I was sitting by the fire, thinking about nothing in particular when I saw it. At first I thought it was a log floating near the shore, but it moved. Not like a log. It glided toward the beach with purpose. My heart pounded. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it at the water. Two eyes reflected back at me, wide and unblinking. They were too far apart, too large to belong to any animal I knew. The thing sank beneath the water and disappeared. I tried to convince myself it was a moose or a bear swimming, but a deep sense of dread settled in my stomach. Something about those eyes felt wrong. An hour later, I heard wet, heavy footsteps on the rocky beach. I peeked out from my tent and froze. It was standing there, on two legs, but not like a human. Its body was too long, arms too thin, and its head was elongated, misshapen. Water dripped from it as it sniffed the air, studying my camp. I held my breath as it walked past my tent. So close I could have reached out and touched it through the fabric. It stopped at my fire and stood motionless as if waiting. Then it turned its head toward me. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, full of needle-like teeth. A gurgling, choking sound came from it, like it was trying to speak but had lungs full of water. Finally, it walked back into the lake, slipping beneath the surface without a splash. I didn't sleep that night. I sat clutching my knife, watching the darkness and waiting for sunrise. At dawn, I packed my gear quickly. Every sound seemed louder in the quiet morning air, and every shadow made me jump. I started hiking back to my car. The trail was steep and rocky. It would take about 3 hours to reach the main road. Halfway there, I noticed something strange. I could hear movement in the forest parallel to the trail. At first, I thought it was another hiker, but then I realized there was no one else around. Every time I stopped to catch my breath, the noises stopped. Every time I walked, they started again. My pace quickened. I kept my eyes on the trees, scanning for any sign of movement. Then I saw it, between two trees, standing and watching me. In the daylight, it was even worse than last night. Its skin was pale and wet, streaked with algae or moss. Its fingers were far too long, tipped with black claws. Its eyes were entirely black, empty and unblinking. Fear hit me like a physical blow. I turned and ran faster than I ever had in my life. Branches whipped against my face, rocks cut my hands, but I didn't stop. I could hear it crashing behind me, chasing me through the forest. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't look back. Finally, I reached my car. Relief hit me in waves as I threw my backpack into the back seat and started the engine. The forest receded behind me as I drove, my hands shaking on the wheel. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest town, 2 hours away. Once I was safe, I reported the encounter to the local police. They looked at me like I had lost my mind. But then an older officer pulled me aside. "You went to Dead Man's Lake, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I nodded, feeling my stomach drop. People have been seeing that thing for 60 years. Indigenous people say it's much older. They call it the swimmer. It drowns people and drags them to the bottom. 3 people have disappeared there. Their bodies were never found. I asked why the lake wasn't closed to the public. "It is," he said. "The road's been barricaded for 10 years. How did you get in?" I explained that I hiked in from the North Trail. He shook his head. "There is no North Trail. That trail was washed out in a flood 15 years ago." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I didn't know how I had gotten there. Somehow I had found a place that officially shouldn't exist. Even now, weeks later, I can't forget it. I lie in bed at night and see those black eyes watching me from the water. In my dreams, I am back at the lake. I walk along the shore, trying to find a way out. But the forest shifts and the path disappears. I hear the water move, hear gurgling, choking sounds that echo in my ears. Every time I close my eyes, I feel the lake calling me back, as if it's not done with me yet. I can't explain what I saw. I don't know if I escaped by chance or if it let me go. But I know one thing. There is something in that lake. Something older and hungrier than any human can understand. And it is still there, waiting.